Welcome to Successful Living with Bill Napick. Every week we talk about success and everything that goes along with it. You'll learn the principles of success, how to achieve success, and learn to overcome challenges that may be getting in the way of success in your life. You'll hear from Bill Napick, a radio personality and business development expert, along with insight from special guests. If you're ready to find your path to success or take the success you're enjoying to the next level, stay tuned. Successful Living with Bill Napick is on right now.
Welcome to the show, Successful Living with Bill Napick. That's me. And today, Successful Living with Mark Ammerman. My friend, he is with an organization called Formula for Success.1, and he is here right now. A very interesting guy. We're going to hear about his background, what Formula for Success is, and so much more. Mark, welcome to the show.
Buffalo Bill Napick, man. It's great to see you. Anyone, if you don't know Bill, he's a great Hammond B3 organ player. I used to play in a band with him some years ago at church.
That's right. Music has been and that's one of the things about success. We think about whatever our vocation is, our passion. We make a living one way or several ways, but it's always great to have things like music, and you play the guitar. Things like music are just some of the great things and the great spices and things of life. So we love all that. But, Mark, let's tell people you are now retired, and you're a young man to be retired, by the way, for about 4 years. Mm-hmm. Let's tell people what you used to do before you retired and what you're doing now.
Sure. I've spent almost my entire career in banking, and most of that career in one firm. I came up out of school here. I did, where I'm sitting here in the studio, I can see the Houston Baptist University. Yep. I graduated from there in 1982. Started a career in banking with, for the people that have been in Houston a long time would remember the First City National Bank, which was the biggest bank in this part of the country back then. But just to show you how things can change when you don't do things right, all the big Texas banks failed back in around the period of 1986, 1987, thereabouts, and First City failed. And I was an energy specialist there because we were one of the largest energy industry banks in the country. And I wound up going across the street to a Canadian bank called the Bank of Nova Scotia, which at that time was just a punk little bank that had been in business about 150 years. But by the time that I left it, it was one of the top 10 safest banks in the world, went through the financial crisis without a hitch. I spent 30 years there and retired at about 58 years old.
That's incredible. And just a word about companies with longevity. I've had the opportunity to work with two companies now that have, one is Church and Dwight Company that is over 180 years old.
And you're with Stuart, right?
And I'm now with Stuart Title.
And I know Stuart Mortis, yeah. He's celebrating his 100th birthday soon.
He's going strong, there's no question. But Stuart Title has been around over 126 years. So it's interesting to see as we look at the landscape of businesses, not just in the United States, but worldwide, of those that have been around for a long time. I didn't know Scotia Bank was around that long, but that's fascinating.
Yeah.
And you were very successful. In fact, as I reminisce right now, I used to travel a great deal, especially with Church and Dwight Company. And as I was in the airport terminal, every once in a while, we would bump into each other as we were on various trips. So, but let's tell people, as you're retired, and when we retire, that just means, we're finding other things to do. And what you found and even started, let's tell people about Formula for Success.
Okay. The quick on Formula for Success is, and I'll step back for a moment to make the story work, is as I was retiring, I went into a intensive training period of business coaching with an organization called Halftime. A gentleman named Bob Buford wrote a book called Halftime, which is a New York bestseller. Very well known in the business community, and they have some of the best business and life coaches that exist. It's an expensive program. It's very intensive. I spent a year there, and they helped me really kind of boil down what my three passions in life were, and those three passions are not in any necessary order. Are basically evangelism, because I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. The other one is business evangelism. And what I mean by that is I had a big speaking gig all around the world in my business travels because I talked a lot about business. I hate when I watch movies and everybody's a crook. Everybody's out trying, the whole, with the global climate movement that's going on, obviously businesses are not going to do the right thing. Governments aren't going to do the right thing. Everybody's a crook. They're all into it for themselves. And I spent a career working with companies and helping them through some of this stuff. And I know a lot of these people are some of the most upright people I've ever run into, and this is not the case. But anyway, so I'm constantly evangelizing for business. The last part is the thing I really like to do. You mentioned music a little bit ago, but I like to race cars. And so I happened one day to see a path forward where I could combine all three of those things: business evangelism, racing, and my love for the Lord, and put them all together in a way that could be useful. And what we're doing is we're teaching ethical and principled decision making to the business school audience. That's basically it. We produce videos of successful businessmen and women talking about an ethical dilemma that they've gone through. One of the videos on my website is my own story, where I was in a situation where when Enron was around, they tried to bribe me on a financial transaction. And I took it to my company and presented it to the board, and they didn't support me. In so many words, they just said, "You seem to be the only person in the world that has a problem with these people. They're the highest flying, biggest fee-paying entity that's out there on Wall Street, and you don't want to do business with them? Are you nuts?"
Until they weren't.
Well, I left the bank to go work for Duke Energy because I felt I'd lost their confidence, and 8 months later, they were bankrupt. And the 3 months after that, I got a call. And we can talk about that later if you want. But I got a call, and suddenly I find myself leaping 3 steps ahead of all the people that I reported to are now reporting to me, and I'm their boss.
Let's reference your website right now, because I saw that video of yours. And by the way, the quality of the videos that are on your website are spectacular. They hear your story, but let's tell them the website where they can go and find out about Formula for Success.
Sure. So if you can tell the formula in cars, it's kind of a Formula One type theme. So it is the word formula, the number 4, the word success.one. Formula number 4 success.one.
And there you go. So let's tell people, as far as racing cars, when did you first have that passion? Was that, you must have had an interest in cars before you retired?
Well,
or not.
Let me say this: the car I was driving when I graduated from high school was a 1971 Jaguar XKE V12. So cars have been in my blood, and I bought it with my own money.
How about that?
Yeah. So I had a job working at Goodyear during the summers and then during the school year, and so I had money. I bought this car. It was kind of a wreck, and I rebuilt it and did the body and redid the engine and did it all myself. My dad was really into cars. He taught me how to turn a wrench. So it's just always been part of that. I started the whole racing car experience about 12 years ago, thereabouts. I blew up 2 cars and then decided I needed to go into the full-blown race cars because, hitting a wall at 160 miles an hour is kind of a nasty thing. So you want to have all the proper cage and fire suppression and other stuff around you. So here I am.
Well, when we think about racing cars, as in our generation, we'll say that's one of the things that little kids wanted to be. Fire truck driver, an astronaut, and they wanted to race cars or be a cowboy, all those things. But that was one of those things because cars just, I think so many people, and probably today too, just love cars. They are fascinating. And
it's part of our culture, man.
It's part of the culture. What kind of cars do you race? And then let's tell them again about the organization and how that fits in with the cars.
Oh, well, okay, here I go. I'm going to get in trouble because I get this all the time. So what do I race?
You're wearing a Ferrari shirt for those that
Ferraris.
There you go.
And I get this all the time. The people come up and harangue me, and they'll go, "Ferraris, why aren't you a Corvette or a Mustang or a Camaro, just as good as one of those? And some of them are just as fast." And I just asked them one simple question. I said, "Would you like to hit a wall at 160 miles an hour in a Camaro, a Corvette, or a Mustang?"
And neither. I don't want to hit.
I haven't heard a yes yet. What I always hear is, "Well, I don't want to hit a wall at all." But
That's
the point
right.
is if you're going to race, you're eventually going to have something bad go wrong, and it may not even be your fault. Some other wacko just runs into you because he's having a bad day. And I've got a video on one of my websites. You can find it on YouTube, but basically it's the Ferrari Challenge Series where my car runs. A guy hitting the wall with a car identical to mine at 160 miles an hour, and he goes airborne straight up, and then starts spinning and going down the wall in 1,000 pieces and lands in the middle of the track with stuff everywhere. And you're watching this video because it's coming from all the other cars that are around it. And one of the cars, the first one up on it, is actually my car. And the video, you see the door kick off and the driver get out and walk away. And you can't stop watching that video over and over again when you see it. So this is, if you want to stay alive and you want to do this, you want to be in the right kind of equipment.
The right car. Well, first of all, I don't know, mechanically the Ferrari is legendary, but they're also beautiful machines. Yep. I mean, what color is yours? You have several,
it's
right?
Red. Well, I've got 2. Yeah, the older one is white, and the when you're thinking of Ferraris, there's in Ferrari lore, it's called the Challenge car. Ferrari Challenge is the racing series, and so a Challenge car is a Ferrari street car that comes down the factory assembly line. I've been there and I've seen this. It comes down the line and it makes a right turn and goes off into, and so when it makes the right turn and goes off into another part of the factory, they start yanking all the leather seats out, all the air conditioning out, the radio, all that stuff that they just put in, they yank out and charge you for it. And don't give it back to you either. and then they put the roll cage and the fire suppression and all the other stuff they do to make it actually a race car. It's really kind of funny. But it is a purpose-built race car. It's not street legal. Nothing you can do with it except wake your neighbors up if you take it home. But it sure is a blast to drive, because think of going through a Houston underpass at about 90 miles an hour, and it'll do it.
So, and by the way, where is the Ferrari factory?
In Italy. Yeah, in Modena.
Nice. And you've been there?
Yeah.
Pretty nice, huh?
Yeah.
So so your car is strictly for racing, and where are the places here in Houston? Let's say I'm sure people that are already racing know where they are, but let's say someone.
Oh man, this is the biggest secret in Houston. There is a fantastic racetrack in Houston on Highway 288 in Angleton. And so if you leave downtown and you're going south on 288, it's approximately about 30 minutes. So where I live over in the Memorial area, it's about 40 minutes on the Beltway. And it's called MSR Houston. It has a website. It's open, free to the public. You can come in anytime you want on a weekend and watch everybody racing. And there's stuff going on. They also have a big go-kart track out there. So real live go-karts, not these funky little electric ones you plug into the wall, but big motorized gear shifting go-karts that a lot of people learn to race with.
So it's just dawning on me as we're talking, if someone's listening, there may be other people out there, Mark, that have always wanted to race cars, but this may be their inspiration to actually do so should they wish.
Oh,
do
yeah.
It right here in Houston.
They have
That's interesting.
They several times a year they have racing school out there where you go and actually take a 3-day course. They can rent you the car to do it, and when you complete the course, you actually get your racing license. There is a racing license, and which course I possess, but you can get a racing license out of that. There also is teen driving schools where they take your kid out on the track and kid learns how to drive his pickup truck or his VW or his Toyota or whatever at high rates of speed and cornering and stuff in case they ever encounter something on the road. But it's a 2.5-mile track, very technical, 17 turns. It's like the one in Austin, so to speak.
17 turns.
Yeah, 17 turns. I just said something I need to qualify. I said it's like the one in Austin. It's like the one in Austin in that it's a racetrack and it's got a lot of turns and it's a great track. But the one in Austin is like Disneyland. It is unbelievable. Circuit of the Americas. This one is older. It's been around 17, 18 years. It's not that finisher quality, but it's a really, really nice track.
And when you said teens learning to drive, I do have to reference this. Doesn't have much to do with what we're talking about, except it's a story about cars and a teenager, being me and my friends. When we first learned to drive in Pennsylvania, one of the things we would do during the winter, back then shopping centers were closed on Sundays. So when it would snow, we would take our cars.
I know where you're going with that.
I don't know if you did. We would take our cars at 16 years old and spin them around in the snow, and it was a lot of fun.
They actually do that as part of the course. We have it's a wet track. And so the fire hoses are pumping water out there. And so one of the things you have to do is turn the car around in a tight curve in a spin with the wheels sliding and be able to guide and stop the car at a precise spot, just like you would in a wet track.
And you have been so successful in business, and now the endeavor that you're in now, you're with a company 30 years. Let's tell people about principles of success that you have used in your business life and in the project you're doing right now, and even in your personal life, because success doesn't happen in fulfillment in what we do, whether it's our profession or things outside of our profession. Those things don't happen by accident. We and individuals usually have core principles that they adhere to. Let's tell people something that might help them, whatever they do.
Sure. Well, as you asked that question, I just had an example come to mind. Early in my career, Bill Gates was on a business meeting with some of his employees, and they were in New York. And as I read this story, I think in the Wall Street, and he's looking at the presentation they're going to make to this client. And he just turns to his people and he just said, "This is something that everybody else would present them. What can we present to be different?" And the story goes on to talk about how his people had to scramble, and they're trying to deal with his disappointment. But really, that was kind of his legacy, was just trying to think of things and see the world in a different way. And I had a big challenge. I was trained at one of the biggest energy banks in the country, where we were known by every single oil and gas company, pretty much in this country I meant to say. And we did things a certain way. And then the bank completely blew its brains out and failed in 1987. This is about the time that I had left. I'd fortunately left them just before they blew up. I didn't have to go through that. But all the Texas banks failed as a result of that. So I go over to this other great big bank, and here is the interesting part of their story. So they're a massive bank. They've been in business 150 years. They had a very small office with 8 or 10 people. When I left it, 30 years later, it was more like 200 people here in Houston, and plus another several hundred people around the world that we had built this energy practice into. But you had all this money, all this capability, all this skill, and no clients and no talent. And so all these Americans suddenly come over to this Canadian bank, and they've got the money, and we've got the relationships and the talent, and we start to build it. But here's the key part. I'm sorry, it was a long way to answer your question. But once you've had your ship shot out from under you in a war like that, you don't ever want to go through that again. And so I just really looked back at all the things that we used to do at First City and said, I never want to do some of that stuff again, because I don't ever want to go through blowing up the ship and having it sink under me again. That was pretty devastating, to have all the big banks in Texas fail and thousands of people lose their job, and they're all out on the street looking for jobs, and there are no jobs, in that type of business. The oil and gas industry was crushed at that time in 1986, and so was the banks. And so where do I go and how do I find success in that? Don't do the things that everybody else was doing that were wrong. So one of the things I did in banking was I was just very careful who I did business with. So if you ask what are your 3 key parts of it? Well, one of them would be, be very careful who you're seen doing business with. And there was a lot of J.R. Ewings, like in Dallas, that were out there, and there were a lot of banks that did business with people like this. Some of these guys were just absolute crooks. And we used to go to business meetings, other bankers, and we'd talk about what a crook that guy was. And yet, he'd come out on the market wanting to do some deal, and people would line up and give him money and take fees from him. And then, 2, 3, 4 years later, the guy'd be broke again and filing bankruptcy. It's like people never learn. And so I just stayed away from a lot of that stuff. I used to like to watch the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon, in later years. He just great quotes all the time. And one of the things that he used to say is, lending people money is not the same thing as serving your client. Your client has a need. And it's like your kid, wants to buy a Corvette. And he says, Daddy, give me, $50,000 to do that. Well, no, you don't. You need a car. You don't need a Corvette. Let me be an adult about this. But financial services institutions are just sometimes nuts. They just do really crazy stuff.
How is racing like business?
Like business? Well,
or how is being successful in business like being successful in racing?
Well, racing is about a couple things. It's about performing. It's about winning. Racing is, as you may or may not know, comes in a variety of factors. One way is what you think of a race. You've got 10, 20, 30 people lined up on a track, and the first 2 or 3 people across win and get to stand on the podium. But does that mean you're the fastest driver? No, not necessarily. Does it? Because racing is a lot about strategy. You've got to make your tires last. Can you maintain your fuel and stay up there? Because if the other guy, you're pushing him so hard and he runs out of fuel, then he's going to have to put him to the pit so he can refuel. And while he does, you're still going. And so you're not the absolute highest speed, but you finish the line first, because now he comes out of the pit after having put some fuel in or having changed tires. There's a lot of strategy that goes into that type of stuff, a lot of teamwork. Blocking the other guy and keeping him from getting ahead, to put pressure on your teammate. If your teammate gets pressure on him, then he has to wear his tires out. If he wears his tires out, he has to come in and get them changed. There's all this stuff
almost
that people
like chess. There were a lot of moves.
It is.
Well, with the last couple minutes, boy, so much to talk about, Mark. But what else do you want people and your organization, Formula for Success? Let's tell people again the website. We're talking with Mark Ammerman with Formula for Success. Let's tell people whatever else you want them to know about the organization should they want to help out. Go ahead.
Yeah, we haven't talked about Formula for Success much, have we? So let me try to paint you a word picture of where this kind of came from real quick. So education is a big part of my life, and I serve on 3 university boards, if you can believe that. I'm on the board of the Houston Baptist University, where I went to school. I'm on the board of the Arkansas State University, where I chair the part of the board that manages the endowments for the state. My wife and her family, going back to great-grandparents, all went to Arkansas State University, and so we built and founded a school there as part of that. So we were sucked into that. And lastly, I'm on the board of SMU. I've got 2 kids there, and but my role is on the board of the McGuire Energy Institute, which is a very prestigious leadership group of energy industry people working with that university. I've got 2 kids at SMU. So as I was moving through this course of retirement, one of the things that was made aware is that schools are struggling with teaching ethical decision making. And the evidence of that is the accreditation boards are just really beating up the schools. And so I'm seeing this as a board member, that the accreditation boards are making the schools' lives very difficult because they go and they test these kids coming out of these schools, and they can't look at an ethical situation and say, I can't really do that, that's wrong. And when you see evidence of that, look at the college admission scandals. Parents cheating on the tests and telling the kid, you're now a water polo player and you're getting a scholarship. And the kid says, oh, okay, I guess if that gets me into the school, that's a good thing. So we see this type of silliness out there. And I had been producing some videos really just for fun with my son-in-law, who's a cinematographer. And we did a silly video using the Ferraris where a guy is late for his airplane and he calls Uber up and he has a choice of Uber X, Uber XL, or Uber Racer X, and guaranteed to get you to the plane on time. And if you can, that's on YouTube. And he clicks it, and the race car appears out of the window. We take him on a terrifying ride in the Ferrari, and we drop him off at the airplane. And this is hilarious. But we had 500,000 hits. And what really blew our mind was it was like 52-48 male-female. We did not expect the female audience on a car-related video to be that high. It really is the Ferrari thing, because the Ferrari is, I think, the number 11 brand in the world in terms of trademark. So we saw this opportunity that if we created videos and we built it around the Ferrari racing theme, and we brought high-impact individuals in and had them walk through and talk about an ethical dilemma that they had faced. We built these. We tested. You talked about the production quality. Well,
beautiful.
A lot of this started because I accidentally met Mel Gibson, and the filmmaker. And so
is there another Mel Gibson?
he was in town. He was in town doing some pre-screening on his movie Hacksaw Ridge, which was the World War II, and it was also a faith movie. And so we were meeting with some pastors, and he shows up at this meeting, and he brings these filmmakers with him who had worked with him. And one of the filmmakers was a man named John Irwin, and John Irwin is the guy who did the movie last year that was the big faith hit called I Can Only Imagine, if you remember that. So John comes to pitch me about I Can Only Imagine, and my family, we decided to invest in the movie. And I said, well, I've got this project with these cars. And so I came and I put him in the car and drove him around on the track, and he just blew his mind. And he is my filmmaker. So I got a Hollywood quality filmmaker helping me do education level films for use in schools. So the schools that we're working with presently include Rice University, Houston Baptist University, Arkansas State University. We're presently negotiating with U of H and San Jacinto Junior College. And I'm sure I've probably left somebody. Oh, SMU, of course. So the whole point is to have a 15-minute video that is played in a business school context of a business leader who has had to walk through the fire of a difficult ethical decision, and then to talk to the students about how those decisions were made, how you reconciled them, and what was how the outcome came out.
And if someone wants to help out the organization, what should they do?
There is, on the website, there's a button that says give or donate, and you're welcome to do that. We are a 501c3 registered with the IRS, and we do accept donations for that. Presently, I'm paying for that, but I'm out raising donors as well.
And the website again is?
Formula4success.one.
The last 30 seconds, Mark. What else you want to tell people?
Trust in the Lord with all of your heart and lean not on your own understanding, and He will bless your ways, believe me, because He has made this stuff happen. Meet Mel Gibson, meet John Irwin all in the space of a weekend, and suddenly have this new thing started off. That's how it happened.
Very exciting. Mark Ammerman, Formula for Success, formula4success.one. Check him out. Thank you for listening to Successful Living, and thank you, Mark, for being on the show. Until next week, and go to radiobill.net for more information. Until then, thanks, Mark.
Hey, man, thanks.